I think so too. I'm not sure it's better to read with or without these glasses. I think I'll try without one. It may be a hot summer day, but we are so cool hovering beneath the two big fir trees above the lake path. Robin and I bought this hammock in San Jose, when Costa Rica is still poor. Today, as we float on this woven cotton raft built for two, I'm amazed how white it still is. At the beginning of every summer, we have to take a hammer and chisel to the bark of the two Douglas firs to expose the cork-buried iron pins that we hook our hammock onto. Our worldly troubles are suspended with us. Shiva is asleep below, and the lake is a painting in oil. We can overhear the Doppler conversations ambling along the boardwalk, but they can't see us. Hanging just beyond the sword fern and salal hedge. "You think their house is West Coast?" asks a woman of her walking companion. "Oh, definitely West Coast," came the astute response. "Well, not exactly. It's more like Shinto Temple, Bucky Fuller, Frank Lloyd Wright Arts and Crafts West Coast," I offer through the bushes. Silence. Some conversations are more bellicose, some more lurid. Sometimes I'll lower my voice for effect. Some don't hear me because of the impermeable protection of their iPods, cell phones, and spandex. A western tiger swallowtail flits overhead. The Aztecs called her Xochiquetzal, goddess of love, flowers, vegetation, and fire. A boat goes by. "Look at this guy in the hammock," he says. "Nice." It's nice. I look up to the sunlight streaming through the muscular branches of these two trees converging on heaven, 4 stories tall, quiet sentinels to this summer's day. Stop me if you've heard this before. You don't really see her until she sways into your left peripheral vision on the first ridge. From out of the craggy fissure, a buried trunk stretches 4 burnt sienna coffee-striped arms and reaches for sunlight. Floral fractals of gray-green lichen are paste-patched on the underside of her violent curves. Her shape traces the crack of a whip. She's textured smooth wood, waxy leaves, and crunchy barks. Her colors are glorious and seasonal. Red and green, pastel in between, my Art Nouveau French drama queen. The sentient soul of these Westwood withering heights, she's my favorite tree in the whole wide world. She doesn't look quite the same anymore. 7 years is a long time in the life of a tree, I guess. We first encountered the vulture, or maybe he found us, one early spring day, while trekking across the second ridge. The trailhead was an hour behind us. The manzanita was in full bloom with pink and white bellflowers, and the sun was throwing emeralds on the wet moss lining the rock path in a grove of rusty arbutus trees. For a brief moment, the light cut out, and we heard a hiss of pinion feathers slide above us. I looked up and was suddenly blinded by the brightness coming back on, and then I saw it. First as a slowly sailing coffin-sized shadow in my peripheral vision, and then as it really was, a carrion airship, thermal riding down to eye level to Shiva, who sat motionless, returning the interest. The monster bird wobbled from side to side like Shiva had done in the garage. I wondered what kind of exchange was really happening at a molecular level, between my dog's twitching black nose and the olfactory messages reaching into the recesses of the turkey vulture's brain, most of which is devoted only to finding death. It was the mother of all mass spectroscopic battles. Shiva has 220 million olfactory receptors compared to my 5. The turkey vulture is able to detect dead animals below a forest canopy by just finding a whiff of ethyl mercaptan, the foul breakdown gas of putrefaction. We haven't seen that this year, but it comes. I've just come in from some sunny winter pruning in the vineyard. There are still undulating seas of snow from the blowing December storms that Robin and I missed by leaving early for New Zealand. Last week, we traveled from barefoot beachcombing, back across the date line, into the deep freeze. This afternoon, I worked on white islands that crunched and sparkled between the rows of vines. On my way back through the hazelnut orchard, I slowed my wheelbarrow, tossing in my secateurs, couch and sweater and toque. Shirts followed. It was one of those rare, solar, zigzag, glistening January days that make you want to lie down naked in hoarfrost diamonds and make angels. Snowblind from the reflected glare, and with all the sound muffled by the ground cushion of floral, frozen coral, I started a Tai Chi set, moving like syrup through the grove of glazed filbert branches. Shiva jumped into the routine in a wolfish attempt to ward off the witchcraft. When I finally gave in, she went back to rolling in the snow. This is what is better. There's a wonderful joy in turning over the hibernating soil in our raised beds today. I can smell chocolate promise, pungent with Pasternak ozone, with every twist and lift of my pitchfork. This is not one of those life and death activities. It's much more important than that. The big hand on my clock. Cicero said that if you have a garden and a library, you've got everything you need. In the garden section of my library, I have a collection of seed catalogs, full of spring anticipation. Gardening begins with the dreams in January, and I dream bigger than emperors. I'm not reading the whole book, there's 26 chapters. It was still 3 years before his death that he made the comment. "A man needs a shed," he said, after careful inspection of the orchard, raised beds, and ramshackle collection of rakes, shovels, hoes, and other garden implements barely supporting each other against the garage wall. My father was undoubtedly thinking of the Canadian Tire can opener prefab metal shed that he had in Ontario years ago. A tiny, windowless box of protruding sheet metal screws and flimsy tin doors that always seemed to come off their plastic sliders. This is not, however, the way Robin and I do things. That autumn, we poured a concrete slab beside the garden. On it, we placed a palatial red cedar shelter, complete with plexiglass, skylight, and built-in potting bench that ran the length of the northern aspect. It was the Cadillac of garden sheds. We filled it with tools and joy and wondered how we ever did without it before. When my father returned the following summer, he was initially horrified at what he perceived was extravagant overkill. But as he was leaving for his return flight home, he turned and uttered a final taciturn mumble. "Like your shed." There's a reason that Shiva and I choose the path we take returning from the ridges. After the giddy vertigo and pumping heartbeats of the top trails, we suddenly find ourselves rafting down through a green ocean glade of giant ferns. Life slows. The toothy viridescence seems to be smiling at the sky. As it engulfs us, we stop. The gravity, draining us back into the woods at the bottom, is softened by streams of sunlight, undulating on emerald fronds. We emerge from doing to being, serene, zen. Now I do have, how are we doing for time? Everybody go somewhere? You want one more? I can do one more. I'm going to do one more. But it's not from this book, because you got to buy the book to read the rest. It's from this book. And I'll show you the difference. I'll show you the difference in the Nobel Committee's down-regulated sensitivity, hopefully, between Westwood Lake Chronicles and this one I wrote last year. The one I wrote this year's 725 pages, so we probably need more time. But I'll read you an excerpt from this one. It's actually about that guy there. Robin and I headed up 4th Street to the town square, where the traditional $8 all-you-can-eat Papoose Club pancake breakfast was already in full swing. All proceeds benefit local youth. Also in full swing was the fiddle band in the background, the jowls of the first crossbow bouncing on the violin under his cowboy hat through the smoke of the hundreds of sausages behind the big wagon wheel doors of the big black barbecues. Toes in the boots of the Stetson pensioners at the front tables tapped in rhythm. Clone cowboy campfire cooks with white cowboy hats, blue and white striped shirts, Levi's, and red aprons manned the griddles, flipping flapjacks and feeding the frenzy. Firefighters ate free and got extra big helpings, having achieved redemption for living the authentic life in nature and facing death with dignity and courage. My paper plate was heavy with pancakes and sausages and bacon and eggs, and the orange juice in my other hand was searching for a place to land. All the picnic tables in the square were full, except for the one directly ahead of me. Only one man sat eating breakfast there in the dappled light, but I could see why he had it all to himself. So old he was Old West. Under his oversized gray felt Stetson was a bushy white beard and a penetrating set of clear blue eyes. He wore a leather vest with a marshal's badge, a blue bandana, and the same striped shirt, blue jeans, and boots as the cowboy clones. I approached cautiously. "Is anyone sitting here?" I asked. "You see anyone?" he said. You can always tell a cowboy, but you can't tell him much. He motioned me to take the seat. "How old are you?" I asked. "Older than the mountains, twice as much dust," he said. "I've seen 80 go by." He was 85, actually. I told him I thought that was pretty old. "It's not about how fast you run or how high you climb," he said. "It's about how you bounce. Out here you live a long time. Even horse thieves have to hang 5 minutes longer than anywhere else." I introduced myself. "Ivan Swanner," he said. "Pleased to make your acquaintance." But his gnarled handshake told me he was less pleased than I was, until Robin arrived